blessings. My name is Carlos Walker, and this is Forward Progress. And today I have Mr. Halim Flowers. Peace and blessings, bro. How you feeling?
I feel blessed. I feel blessed. Honored to be here. It's been in the making, but I timed it at the right time. You know.
Look, everything happens the way God intended and
hmm
when it's supposed to.
Right.
So, before we start, share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Harleen Flowers. I like to refer to myself as cultural engineer. I think if I just say I'm an artist, then depending upon people's frame of reference, right, they might think you're a rapper,
Hmm.
or you know, if people familiar with my visual art, then they may only think you're a painter, but they don't know like you're a poet, you're a spoken word artist, you're a fashion designer, um, you're a rapper, you know, comedian, and so, but all these are cultural assets, things that add to the culture. And so for me, I just say I'm a cultural, culture engineer. You know,
I actually like the term. You might ought to coin that joint.
yeah,
Yeah,
people can have them.
look, you.
Ideas are endless. People can have them. I can't trademark everything.
I got you.
Yeah.
So, if you will, share a little bit about your past. You were formerly incarcerated, correct?
Yes, sir.
But what we do here on Forward Progress, we don't just speak about that. This is about the forward progression of you as an individual. I like
hmm
to look at it like the butterfly effect, from
Right.
caterpillar to butterfly. So, if you will, go back as far as you would like, into your past, from a
hmm
child, from a kid who was young and innocent, up until the day that you basically got locked up. If you will, share that.
Born in 1980, District of Columbia. Um, Spent a little bit of time in Virginia with my family in Virginia Beach, age of 4 to 5, and 5 to kindergarten. I was in Chesapeake, Virginia. My grandmother lived in Deep Creek, and so I got like my Tidewater is like my second home. Growing up as a kid, and so spent public school, academically gifted and talented. Um, Mom and dad watched them get married when I was 5, and my dad um, went through a drug addiction with crack cocaine, and so we moved into DC, and in '86 we came back, and you know it was the crack era and the hip hop era, and so and then like having a two-parent household and dealing with the trauma of a parent uh, dealing with a crack addiction, especially at that time, a new drug, and all of the cultural um, disgrace that comes with that, being a crackhead. You know what I'm saying, in the '80s and stuff like that. And so that's when I first experienced trauma, and so and then the neighborhood we moved in the Capitol Hill area. Um, by the RFK Stadium, not too far from there, was gun gun violence, a lot, and poverty, but not like poverty in other areas of the city. Now that I think about it, with a lot of gun violence, a lot of negative ramifications from crack cocaine, and so I went from the spectrum of, when my dad was more in my life, I started boxing when I was 6. I used to box for Ham, and so I would go from the gym to school to the mosque because my dad is a member of the Nation of Islam. So I kind of like had that trifecta growing up with just the mosque, and at that time the mosque, how the Nation of Islam, how they do, they got the junior FOI, so you like training and drilling and selling bean pies and bow ties and final calls, and so I like had that trifecta of school, religion in gym, training. And once my dad was removed and him and my mom got divorced when I was like 10, he moved to the West Coast of Vegas. So I kind of like stopped going to the gym. I remember I took my pre-SAT, I was 11. And then I was able to take some classes at Howard the summer of 92. I was 11 going on 12, headed to middle school. And then by the time I was 93, I was just selling dope. And so, and now looking back, I didn't have to sell dope. I wanted to because I wanted things that my mom wouldn't give me because I stopped going to school like that. And it was I felt that I needed those things because I had low self-esteem, just succumbing to negative peer influence. It's not like I felt bad about myself. I just think that when you're dealing with adolescents, teenagers, it's this need to belong, especially when you don't have your dad.
Yeah.
You're a young man. That's when, Jews, they got the bar mitzvah. Other cultures have things in place. And so when you lose your dad, when you've had your dad in your life, and then you lose your dad from your life, it's a vacuum, and it becomes oftentimes in our urban environments, it becomes filled with older teenagers who, engaging in destructive behaviors. And so that pretty much is my situation, selling drugs. Of course, that lead to gun violence. And I caught my first case, I was 15. And I mentioned that because I saw my juvenile attorney was at the jump thing that I went to. Now she's vice president of the ACLU. So, she's fighting this current administration, at the highest levels. And then when I was 16, I caught another case. When I was 15, I was charged for shooting 2 guys. And I was guilty of that. I did that. I went to trial, got convicted, and but I still was able to get probation. And then when I was 16, I got charged with being an aid and abettor to a felony murder in DC, and they charged me as an adult. And I wasn't guilty of that one. But, they didn't really say I did anything. They said I was with a friend who did something. And of course, they offered me an opportunity to cooperate and go home. But I just still feel that once you make decisions in life, accountability is important. And so one thing you learn in the criminal lifestyle all the time, you're not going to get locked up for stuff that you do. Sometimes you're going to get falsely accused, but you don't circumvent accountability for your decisions to choose that lifestyle by cooperating with the government to prosecute anyone, friend or foe. And so, because it's the life that you chose. And so even though I chose that life as a 12-year-old child, I understood that then and I understand that now. Once you cross that threshold, you put yourself in that zone.
You got you home.
To be punished for stuff that you're affiliated with. And I understood that. And so, I went to trial. I was 16. I came in, I was 16 in 1997. Went to trial when I was 17, got convicted. And what was strange about my case was they took me to trial by myself. So I thought that they didn't have anything on me. So I'm like, I'm going to beat it. I didn't know that under the felony murder liability doctrine of felony murder, that everything that the principal, who is the shooter, is charged with,
You get charged with.
and all of that evidence comes in your trial, even if your trial is severed. So our trials got severed because my co-defendant had like 2 other cases, and so every time we would go to trial, it would have to get postponed because he had another murder and 2 other cases. And so after the last delay, my lawyer was like, "Man, my client has been over here since he was 16. Like he's about to turn 18. Like you got to let him go out on bond." And so the judge was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I grant it." And so the government was like, "No, he's a violent offender. He just was convicted for shooting 2 people. If he get out, he gonna kill a witness." And and so we're taking this trial individually. And so that's how I ended up going to trial by myself. They charged me for 4 murders for 1 murder, 4 different counts of murder for 1 murder. So of course they ended up convicting me of 2 counts of murder, gave me 2 life sentences for 1 murder, and 40 to life, 20 to life, and that was in '98. And then that's when I went to Lorton Prison. Um,
Before we
and
get get a little deeper, 40
yeah,
to life, for those who don't know, your parole would have started, or you would have went up for parole at 40.
yeah, that would have been 2037.
Good God.
Yeah, I still got like 12 more years to go.
And
Yeah.
another thing before we get too far, when they actually gave you the time,
Hmm.
I like to deal with the psychological standpoint of everything.
Hmm.
What was running through your mind?
It was funny because in one of my books called Buried Alive, right? It's a
Mm.
poetry book, but my sentencing transcripts is in the beginning of that book. And once I got convicted, I knew I was going to get, life sentences. And so I only like cried out being upset when the jury read the verdict. I think it hurt me more because I kind of bought into the race thing at that time. And I only had like 2 white jurors and
Mm.
10 black jurors, mostly black women. And they allowed the white guy to be the one that read the verdict. Just the optics of that was disturbing to me. My judge was black, my lawyer was black, the prosecutor was black, and so when they read the conviction, I cried out of like frustration. But the 2 months that I had in between conviction and sentencing, I already knew what I was facing. So when I went to sentencing, like I'm like just in here listening to the judge, the prosecutor first say what he say, then my lawyer. Then they asked me that I got something to say. I'm like, nah. And so the judge was like, I know you're probably thinking right now, just give me the time and get me out of the courtroom and da da da. And I was like, damn, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I just want to state for the record that I want to appeal my conviction and get me out of here. Like, get me out of, give me my time, send me down Lorton, and give me what I need to go. I'll fight in the law library. So that was on my mind initially as sentencing. But I remember as he was calling out the time for each count, and I remember. Hold on for 1 second. I remember, like I don't know if it was my grandmother or my female cut. I remember somebody screamed.
Mm.
Oh, it was a female. I ain't even look back. I know my mom wasn't there. You know what I'm saying? But I know, like, I didn't know at that time that my grandfather told all the men in the family to come to court. I never looked back,
Mm.
right? But my father told me this recently. He was like, man, your brother, your cousin. He was like, man, your uncle. He said, your grandfather said, man, all the men go to court, especially the young ones.
That's powerful.
And he wanted them to see it, the ones that was underneath me. He was like, I want y'all to see what happened to you. You know what I'm saying? And so, but that's what I was thinking. Like, man, just give me what you gonna give me. I just want to file my appeal, and but that was in court. But I can't say I went into a slump for like. He sentenced me in August '98. I ain't come out of that slump till like July. 99. I went to like a slump for a year, depression, because I noticed I wasn't working out like that. I was smoking weed, cigarettes, wasn't really praying like that. I think I just wanted to engage in cognitive dissonance for a minute. Like I didn't want to deal with it for a minute because
Mm-hmm.
I knew like once I fought it, I was gonna fight it. So I was like, let me just get a year. I
Separate
didn't put it.
yourself
I didn't put
from
a
the
time
feelings.
on it. I was like, okay, I'm at the adult DC jail, but I'm on a tier with other 16, 17-year olds. I'm going down Lord and I'm on a tier with guys that had been locked up longer than I had been alive. And so now I'm like, let me just wrap my mind around this
Mm.
environment first. Let me focus on this because the appeal process was going to take time to get my transcripts. And so that kind of gave me some cushioning. Like, all right, let me
Get
focus
the
on,
get the
because
wild side out.
you got to develop your mind and
Yeah.
your body. Because you're going from, okay, yeah, I'm on this tier with 16, 17-year olds and dudes stabbing each other and fighting her. But now it's a different type of strength when you're around guys in their 30s and 40s and 50s that have been in for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. You know what I'm saying?
And this is
It's,
Lorden back in what was it? Was it 90s,
yeah,
early 2000s, basically?
99, 98, 99. I left in 2000, went to Sussex 2 in Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lorden back then was different.
I don't think it probably was like it was in the 80s and 70s, but Lorton is Lorton, though.
That's what I'm saying. It's different
Lorton is Lorton.
than the federal prison.
Yeah, yeah, Lorton.
Lorden was totally different
Yeah, Lorton is
from
Lorton.
what I hear.
Lorton is Lorton. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, local prison, all guys from the city. So you got guys with, beefs from the streets. You don't know who nephew you done killed or shot, or so you're dealing with that. And the staff is people from the city.
Hmm.
So it's it's like the streets. It's like the streets. It's dangerous. You know.
So share a little bit about Lorden, because
Mm-hmm.
many people hear stories.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I even recently ran into an old warden. She's a female that was over Lorden,
Mm-hmm.
and to some extent, you hear great things that was there, and then
Mm-hmm.
you hear, like you said, you hear the Lorden stories.
Yeah, life is gonna be dichotomous, no matter where you at. And so you're gonna have, you know, life is gonna show up in extreme polarities, whether it's the military, the White House, Harvard University.
Hmm.
Life is always dichotomous. And so for me, I didn't, some guys have been like the Occoquan and the Hill and Youth Center. Like I went straight to behind the wall, maximum security. And so you lock down, you come out for outside recreation an hour Monday through Friday, and you come out on a tier for 20 minutes to use the phone and take a shower, I think 3 days a week. So you actually, on the days you go outside and you don't come out, like you might come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Um, so on those Tuesdays and Thursdays, Saturday and Sunday, you never come out the cell.
Hmm.
And so if you go outside and wreck on Tuesday and Thursday, because those visit days, you gotta take a bird bath
Yeah.
out the sink. And so I think it was like 20 cells on the tier. You got the upper tier, lower tier, two sides to each unit. 7 block was like population, but it's it take a while to get there. You got to at least go through 2 years of that solitary confinement before you even consider to go to population. And so it was dichotomous, man. I've seen guys, because when you come out the cell, you got to come out handcuffed when you go to the yard behind your back. Seen guys get stabbed, cuffed behind their back. Seen guys get knives taken from them, but then I've seen guys pray 5 times a day and fast, and You know, I've seen guys, man, be kind and compassionate and studious, and I think for me, I was able to. It was two things that worked to my advantage. I wasn't afraid, so I didn't attract like,
That type
yeah,
of energy.
I didn't attract that, and so, and I've always been kind of like very cerebral, and I'm not like a, I'm not like a cliquish person, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not confrontational. Like I'm not somebody that's difficult. So I could be on the tier and just mind my business, and I'm gonna protect my person and my property. And so I never had no problems in Lord, me personally, because like I spoke when spoken to, and I dealt with people, you know, respectfully, and I wasn't really looking for friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I was looking to get out, and so um, and I met some great guys, man. One guy gave me he heard because I used to rap, right? And so I would be on the tier rapping, and one guy, I never forget him, named Bumpsy. He came to my cell. He said, "I hear you rap, man. You intelligent." He say, he said, "Have you ever heard of George Jackson?" So I
Mm.
said, "Man, what is he, like Michael Jackson, brother? You know what I'm saying? Like he one of the Jacksons," and he laughed. You know what I'm saying? He said, "I'm gonna give you this book," and he gave me Solidarity, brother. You know, and that book changed my life. You know what I'm saying? Once I read that book, seeing how George was able to do what he was able to do from prison,
Mm-hmm.
it showed me that if I applied myself, that I could make something of myself, you know what I'm saying, to be recognized by the world, even from within prison. And so I read that book. I was 17, about to turn 18. George went to prison. He was 18. And I was like, man, I just need to apply myself. And like, when I read his book, it made me feel so stupid that I felt like from the from that point on up until now, I never engaged with like just pure foolishness.
Mm.
And I read that book in '98 up until this day. Like I don't like I won't know who like who beefing with who going with who said who this and that. You know all the stuff about the sports. You know it's like because when this guy I'm reading his letters from prison, he's talking about Che, Fidel, Mao Mao, Jomo Kenyatta, communism, socialism, capitalism, Federal Reserve Banking, James Baldwin, uh, you know, the People's Revolution of China, Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. I'm like, what the hell is he talking? This dude talking about economics. I'm like, man, I don't know nothing.
At 17, and hold on, what was he? He was
I'm
17, 18. How old was he then?
17 is the letters from the age of like 19 to like he got killed when like 31, 30, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so then I'm reading like with his little brother Jonathan, how he was moving, you know what I'm saying, when he was 17. And so I'm like, man, I've been like playing, you know what I'm saying? Because I was raised, keep in mind, I was raised in the nation.
Yes.
So before I became Sunni, I was under black
Militant teaching.
nationalists and
Yes.
militancy. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember they had the dope busters. You know what I'm saying? And so and me just reading George, it's like, man, you know what? All I was reading in the Washington Post was the sports page in Metro. I said, from now on, I'm gonna read the front page and the money section.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna read the world affairs, sports and the local stuff alone. You know, I don't have time for sports and a microcosm perspective of what's going on in petty crime and you know in DC. I need a global perspective. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I need to understand economics, finance, and banking.
Mm.
You know, and so that was like that seed that planted in me at that young age, and from that point on, I just started to model my letter writing from George,
Okay.
and that kind of like went from rap to poetry. You know, love letters, revolutionary love letters, and then revolutionary love poetry, and that's how I kind of like started my publishing company off of that and started publishing the books just with the poetry, you know, with George Jackson,
So
great influence.
you actually wrote most of your books in prison?
Yeah, yeah.
How many
Mm-hmm.
do you have right now?
I just came out with six this year within the last few months because for my nonprofit. But before that, I had 11 that I did in prison, and then since I've been home, the gallery published a table art book.
Okay.
So if it's 11 in prison, the art book that's 12, and then the 6 that's 18.
So technically, what was most of your books that you wrote in prison? Was they mostly poetry, or was it just different things?
Well, mostly self-help, forward poetry. Um, Forward poetry. One was a memoir about my life. And then you had like self-help books like Mind Over Matter, Be Great Wherever You Are, What Our Fathers Never Told Us, Time, How to Do It, Not Let It Do You for young offenders, which is like a cognitive therapy workbook. And there was one called Niggonomics, What Blacks Must Know About Money. And so
Hold that thought real quick. And you said the book it was niggonomics?
What Blacks Must Know About Money. Yeah.
Okay. Share a little bit about that.
For me, I studied a lot, man. I had great mentors that taught me a lot about economics, banking, and finance. And what I learned from it, I knew that I would never have like problems with money.
Mm.
But even more important, it's like economics taught me value. And so like, and I felt and I feel like we as African American people suffer because not a lack of money, but how we value it and what we do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like the way that the country is set up, it has people so fixated on race. I look at race as a generic construct, right? People have always been identified by their tribes and what
Mm-hmm.
nations they come from. But like black and white and brown, this is a new generic construct that I believe is a fallacy. But nonetheless, in this republic for which it stands, we categorize people in that, and I'm in the black category,
Yeah.
whether I agree with it or not. And so, and our category tends to statistically operate at the worst spectrums of health and wealth, which are the two most important things to me. Spiritual health being the most important, right? Having a connection to the Creator, irregardless of your religion. You can choose your religion, but spirituality is your morals and principles that are fruits of your religion. You know, like it says in the Bible, you should know them by the fruits that they bear.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a person has a religion, a belief, it should show up in their spiritual principles, in the way they treat themselves and others. Other than that, it'll be rejected, right?
Yeah, because those are the fruits, how
Like
the
many
things that
people
you
will
can
come
see.
on that day and say, my Lord, you know what I'm saying? But I'll say, you know what I'm saying? You didn't
Look,
feed the homeless. You didn't
I do
visit the
not
sick.
know
And
you workers of iniquity.
yeah,
Look.
you know what I'm saying? And so the proof is in the pudding. And so, but health and wealth, spiritual, physical, mental, financial health, well-being. So it's all health, but if you want to break it up into health and wealth, which is health, spiritual, mental, psychological, emotional. Wealth is, the mundane, tangible, generic constructs that we are indoctrinated to value, whether it's gold or paper currency or cryptocurrency or stocks and bonds and these different companies and corporations. And so, but these are things that you have to deal with in the mundane world. You know, since man was kicked out the garden, this is his tax he has to earn from the sweat of his brow. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but having that balance in both is important to me. And I learned so much about it. And I'm like, damn, the majority of people would never have the time to sit and learn, you know. So let me spit these books out and get this information back to the people, knowing that, you know what, they're not going to see the value of it because I'm still in. But once I get out and implement the curriculum, because the 11 books is just curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so those who read the curriculum while I was in, when I was writing it on paper and letting them read it, they looking at people that are looking at the art, and they like, man, that ain't nothing new he painting about. You just
Because
ain't
he was
read the
already
books.
speaking about it.
You just didn't read the books. If you read the books, you would see he already was talking about it. He just came home and switched up with the art, right? And so, yeah, so you know, the niggonomics, what blacks must know about. I chose the title because I wanted like to shock people. I know niggonomics would be controversial, the combination of nigga and economics, but the point is what blacks must know about money. And so, and to this day, it's like it's still important. Now you see people like they want to boycott, you know, these different brands because they don't want to do DEI. And so I feel like it's good that people know the power, you know, the consumer power that they have. But I would like them to know that, understand how money is created,
Mm-hmm.
understand like
Understand the
how
value.
the value, but not even the engineering of money.
Mm.
Understand like how you see people buy these $1 million homes, but they're just entering 10-year interest only mortgages, paying the interest for 5 years every month,
Mm-hmm.
and sell a property before they ever had to pay the principal.
Because they really, whenever you pay, my father taught me something. He said you can actually pay the principal and not have to pay the interest. It's up to you whether you let the people know what you want to pay first. Now,
Right.
I've never, I've
Now
only,
they're doing it in the reverse way,
yes.
right? So this is what the wealthy people do. This is a trick I learned from a Nigerian brother at Goldman Sachs. Because there's a such thing as interest only loans,
Mm-hmm.
right? Say if you want to get a house in McLean, nice $2 million house. You might want to get a house there. You may have a child because they have the best public schools in the country. So you get a $2 million, you get approved for the loan, you get interest only. So say if your mortgage normally would be with interest and principal 10,000 a month, right? You put down 3% of the 2 million, that's like 60,000. You put down 60, and then your mortgage with the principal and the interest may be 8,000 a month, but you only doing the interest. So interest you may be only paying 3,000 a month,
Mm.
right? You do that for 5 years, knowing that you're going to sell before the 10-year mortgage, because you know you're never intending to pay the 2 million
No.
principal, right? The 2 million minus the 60,000, right, that you put down. And so you're like, all right, I'm gonna pay this for 3, 4 years and then sell it and then move into another house like that.
And
Because
you
I'm
come
only
up.
here for my kid to go to high school,
Mm.
right? And so whatever it is over the principal, because the value then went up like McLean, everybody want to be in that area. You still make a couple of dollars and you ain't paying nothing but interest payments.
That's all you paid.
And that's how you're able to like, and so that's why I say it's important for us to learn the engineering of money, how money is engineered, how when you get a car or a mortgage for a house or a loan for your business, they're just going to take these loans and package them into these collateralized debt obligations
Mm-hmm.
and sell them and different companies gonna be, see, like 1 month you paying your mortgage here, next you're like, damn, how these people keep getting my mortgage? Because they flipping it.
They
They're
flipping your
making
money the
money.
whole time.
They making money off your student loans,
Off
your credit
everything.
card loan. So you know what I'm saying? So I want people to understand how money is engineered so that they can understand the value of it is really meaningless, and that you shouldn't attach your ego to your
Some
net
meaningless
worth
stuff.
valuation. Like, oh, he's worth this. It's just somebody's opinion.
Okay.
What is your opinion? What do you value? We put so
Mm.
much value into money, but why do you buy? Why do you value? What are you really going to do with the money? So what happens is they don't mind giving like the uneducated, self-destructive rapper, athlete millions of dollars,
Me.
because they know like
You ain't
it's
gonna do
coming
nothing but
back to
blow it
us.
anyway.
We're gonna buy
It don't
our
mean
liquor,
nothing.
cars, our hotels, our luxury designer. Like they're gonna give it all back to us, and if we get it, we actually not gonna spend it. So we don't mind like giving. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the thing. I just want people to understand like how banking works, how every $100 you put in, they're gonna loan out like $99 and only keep a fraction of what you put in and charge interest on everything that you got in your savings account. You got your money in savings and checking. They're taking that and they're making that work. They flipping that over and over and over. And if they do a call on the bank, they only insured up to 250,000.
That's it.
Everything after that, you hit.
You hit. It's gone. So
So I ain't gonna keep going down that rabbit
no,
hole, but
no, no.
that's yeah.
So all of this stuff, for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
you learn while sitting in there in what I would call the university, because for some
Yeah.
people it's prison, for
Mm-hmm.
others it's a university.
Mm-hmm.
What did you? I'm pretty sure, other than letting people read your books, how
Mm-hmm.
did you help people in there teaching wise?
Well, we had like I remember I was in Lewisburg. I started like a mentor thing with this when I started realizing I wasn't the youngest guy on the yard no more. Cause when you come in, I'm always the youngest guy on the yard, right? So you got guys coming in with tattoos on their face, right? And they wearing their pants tight. Back then that was like the gay
Ain't nobody
guys.
doing that back in
Like the
the
homosexuals
early
wore,
2000s.
like the guys who were like openly gay.
Yes,
They
yes.
wore tight pants and then tied their shirts up like that. That
Mm-hmm.
was the thing, so you could know, that's what they was on. And so I started seeing the young guys come in like wearing tight pants and tattoos on them. And what really let me know when the guy was like, man, Jay-Z trash, man. Gucci Mane, the best rapper ever. I was like, who the hell is Gucci Mane? I ain't even know only song I knew was Lemon, because I'm up in the mountains. When you in the feds, you in the mountains, you don't have access to black
Yeah.
radio stations, right? Back then you didn't have MP3 players. And so I started like a little mentor thing there. Then I went to the medium security. We had like a DC mentor project. And so for me, it's just like when I went to the medium, I was able to get to like young guys just coming off the street that didn't have life sentences. And so like anybody, man, like that did time with me, like I always looked out like for younger guys. I always went out my way to talk to them, let them read my books. And I think like the greatest thing I did for them is that they had an opportunity to see somebody with a life sentence that didn't act like they had a life sentence. So them seeing me like they're 18. See, me, I read about George Jackson.
Mm-hmm. They seem they got to
I
be
started to
around
read
you.
about like Johnny Spain and Dave Carr, the guys that George came in with. When I started
Mm-hmm.
reading their books, and they were saying like how, when they had the Wolf Pack, when they was in like the youth center joint, and then how, Dave Carr was like, man, I watched him go from us being wild and going to war with the old heads in the prison. And then I left. And then when I came back in, like he has exceeded all race, all gangs. Like he was a dragon. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for them, it was like the benefit that they got to because I see him all the time now. I was just coming up my house and one of them was a UPS driver. He was like, man, it's Noodles. And I came and hugged. I'm like, damn, man, Noodles. Like, you know what I'm saying? And so I think the greatest thing that I gave them more than anything was, irregardless of what I wrote in the book or what I said, they saw a guy that was late 20s and early 30s that had life, who didn't act like it. They never saw me rape anyone. They never saw me pull my penis out and masturbate in front of the guard. They never saw me, engage in homosexual activities. They never saw me gambling. They never, you know what I'm saying? So only thing they saw me do, they might have said I was burnt out. They was like, man, you burnt out, because burnt out is making your bed and tucking your shirt in. You know what I'm saying? And ironing your slacks and having the crease in it. And, so they like, man, you burnt out. You institute, you wake up in the morning, you make your bed all tight. And
You got discipline to yourself, basically.
Discipline, because I'm understanding now that I'm starting to learn, I'm starting to see that this generation of young guys coming in, they had no male influence. They don't even know they feminine.
Mm-mm.
They don't even know they feminine.
It's natural to them.
So it's natural. And so I'm like, dang, the basic things, the bathroom, wash your hands, brush your teeth in the morning before you go out. You don't just go out your cell off the morning breath. And these are things that's basic, right? I went to them. And so I started to see, like, wow, like, man, like, that's what I started to say, like, what the hell happened while I was gone? I'm seeing it coming in.
We were gone.
I come in 97, I get out in 2019. I get out in 2019. Now you open the door for a woman in public, like, oh my God, that's throwback.
Yeah.
Speak with them and get on the inside get on the inside. You open the door, tell them to get on. Anything like that is like antiquated. For me, that was like the norm.
That's the norm. That was the norm back then.
Right. So things change. Even like, I remember talking to them one time. I said, I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna start a business, this and that. And the young guy said I was institutionalized. And they was laughing at me.
They didn't believe.
I couldn't believe it. They said,
believe.
nah, man, you've been in jail too long. The lick now is you get you a girl on Section 8, you get her pregnant, and you stack your money for 18 years. I couldn't, bruh. And they was serious. I was
dead
like,
serious.
what? I couldn't believe it. So there's greatest influence on them was just my presence, having a publishing company, writing books, going to the law library, working out, and just keeping my cool and not being reckless because I got life. And so that was that influence on them. And then now that I'm out,
they get to see.
Oh, damn, this he was like, nah, that's what he was on in there. So now they get to see, like, I was around him when he was doing this and this and that. And we hope that he was get out. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I hope you get out, man. But now that he's out, now we see, like, oh, I might need to revisit them disciplines he was saying.
Those seeds he was planting, not just in himself and in us, just became fruit.
Right.
So another part that I got to get into the psychological part. When you find out that you have gotten parole, no, you ain't even get parole. When your charges was or everything got overturned.
Yeah.
What was you at mentally? I already know prepared because you've been preparing the whole time. But what was it like?
Well, for us, I fought from 2004 when the Supreme Court was hearing the oral arguments and taking the briefs in the case Roper versus Simmons about juveniles under the age of 18 getting the death penalty. I knew then that I was getting out. Everybody thought I was misplacing the argument because they, man, how does that apply to us? That's a death penalty. I was like, if he can't get the death penalty, you can't get life.
Mm-mm.
It's the same thing. I said, it's just, it has, if you read the language, you can't smoke, you can't drink, you can't serve in the military, you can't vote, you can't get
My
married.
cognizance
It's
there.
no way that they're not going to let us go eventually. I knew it, and so I stayed with it. So when the DC changed their law in 2017, I had been fighting for 13 years, right? And so, and then the things I was doing, going to college and stuff like that, it just expedited my process once the law was changed and increased my probabilities of getting my motion granted for my resentencing and release. So for me, once they changed the law, I remember I was like, man, I got the joint in the mail. I was in solitary confinement for something I didn't do. They misidentified me as one of my little homies because I still look young. You know what I'm saying? And I was in the hole with all my little homies. And they like, man, they brought me like, what the hell you doing back here? I was like, man, I don't know. But I'm waiting on this law to change. And when the law changed, I remember I got in the mail. I was boom, 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 boom. I was I was crying. Ah. They were like, man, what happened? And young, because they all like 18, 19. They all like 30 now. They all 18, 19. Like, what happened over here? Like, I'm going home. I'm going home. You know, hey, man, and so when I see them now, they was like, man, I remember, man, you was in the hole. And so once they did that, and it was like, it still was that the DC City Council enacted it in November 2016. They passed it, and then it became enacted because we got to go through a U.S. congressional review period. It passed that in April 4th, 2017. So I didn't get out to 2019 March 21st. It was a 2-year because they had to give everybody lawyers. The first lawyers I got was scared because they was corporate lawyers. I had to fire them and file myself. Got back from California. They moved to California. I got back from California, got back to DC jail, and so. But once the law changed, I knew I was coming home. But I remember coming back on a writ in 2018 and catching a plane from California, and I was stuck in Oklahoma for Memorial Day weekend. And I remember the guy when I got there, the work, the CO, he said, you know where you going? I said, yeah, I'm going home. He said, oh, no, you going to court. I said, man, I'm getting released. He said, even if you getting released, you still got to come back to California to get. I said, man, I ain't no way in hell I'm never coming back here. Man, it's the last time you gonna see me. And when I left, I didn't pack none of my stuff. So the lady at R&D in California, Atwater, she's like, Flowers, where your stuff at? I said, man, I ain't coming back. She was like, man, you sure? Because the guy did that one time. He went to court and I said, look, man.
It's over.
It's over. It's over. And I remember like coming back to DC and pulling up in the city in May. This was May 2018. And I remember just like seeing the city, like, damn, like it was everything had changed. You know what I'm saying? I was just so happy. So it was a problem. But I knew back then in 2016 it was a wrap. You know what I'm saying? It just took a little process.
So you out.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said you came home with March 21st, 2019.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah.
Okay, you out. Share all of the great things that done transpired from then till now, because you've been home over the last what 5 and 5? Yeah, it'd be 6 years in March.
Yeah. Man, both of my parents were still alive. I had 2 grandparents still alive. All my men got out. You know what I'm saying? Like, because all of us got life as juveniles, so all of them got out, and I had got a fellowship, the Echo and Green Fellowship, which was like a national fellowship. When I applied for it before I got out, I started a business with somebody, social justice business, and so we got that fellowship. I remember going to New York City And it's a global fellowship. So like, you had people from that's a part of my cohort from Norway,
Everywhere.
Zambia, like, and I remember pitching, and the Department of Justice didn't want me to go to New York, right? And so my PO, her supervisor, they fought the Department of Justice for me. And they said the agreement they came to was they was gonna put the ankle monitor on me. And so I remember being there. I'm in New York City, and I'm pitching at this joint, and I'm walking around with a suit with the ankle monitor, man. I remember a dude from Detroit, Ray. He was like, bro, he said, man, I've been doing this social justice work for like 8 years now. He said, man, when I heard you speak, he was like, man, I got to go back and re-scrap he was like, man, he said, man, you on fire, right? He was like, man, you don't even know it. But I was like, man, I'm hungry. Like, I've been in, you know what I'm saying? And so I got that. I got another fellowship in Georgetown, the house here on Arts Lab. So that gave me like, the first fellowship gave me 45,000. The second fellowship at Georgetown, they gave me a condo in Georgetown and a free studio and like 10 bands and a little monthly stipend. And so I ain't had no money concerns. Like, and then I would get opportunities to speak publicly and sell my books, the 11 books. So I did that the first year. Had an opportunity to work with Kim Kardashian. She helped one of my brothers get out, Mamadou Stewart.
Shout out to
So
my
that's how I
boy.
met Kim. And shout out to Kim Good Peoples. Kim introduced us to Kanye. That's how I did the Sunday service with him at the Howard Homecoming in 2019. And then was doing my thing, the public speaking, spoken word, selling books. And then March 2020, the whole world going lockdown. You know what I'm saying? And so all of my revenue kind of like was from in-person stuff. But I had just got a grant from the Art for Justice Fund for like 40. And I was like, damn, I was kind of liquid. I went into COVID liquid. For me, like somebody that like did everything the right way, like I was liquid. And so because I was saving up to get a house, I knew you had to have two years of tax returns. And so I and I got married and my wife was pregnant. And so we was
Congrats.
coming back from my studio and she was like, let's just get some paint to have something to do while we on quarantine.
So this was when you started painting.
So that's when I started painting. I just started painting like just to do something during the quarantine. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? But I had something to paint about. I thought that I had to know how to draw figuratively, right?
Nope.
Like a paint behind you is figurative of Jay-Z.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a whole
It's a
genre
whole
of
different
abstract
style.
and
Yep.
figurative art, right? And I just started out like painting the poetry, and that led me to getting represented by some galleries, and so most of the stuff that I've done in the last 6 years, because I look at my time as like 1 year that's before COVID, that's BC, AC is after COVID, and so the people that got to know me after COVID, they don't know about the books and the public speaking. They know about the art
Okay.
and the galleries and the museums and the fashion. The fashion kind of spent off stuff that came off the art. And I released some 2 hour one solo album. Me and Mama Lou just released an album from Prison to Paris.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard pieces
Yeah,
of it.
been able to do art exhibits throughout the world, France, Italy, and LA, of course, everywhere in the country. New York got a show coming up in Ibiza, Spain, in May 8th through the 12th. And so, I just been blessed to be an entrepreneur, um, and so when I really look at it, like everything has just been taking my intellectual property and being able to make a living off of it, and hopefully to be able to use social media and public speaking and podcasting and interviews like this to inspire people um, to live their dreams, you know, and so and then meaningful relationships. Like I'm big
Yeah,
on social capital. I'm one of the type of people that don't really care about money. Like I'm not on money.
yeah, you understand.
I handle my business, manage my money, but I'm not. I've never felt like I needed. Not since I was a kid, but like I don't need money and cars and jewelry and stuff to be important and valued, right? And so, um, yeah. So health and wealth. Wealth to me now is like intergenerational wealth. One time was like a lot of anxiety about the trust fund and the savings account for my daughter and stocks and stuff like that. But now it's like intergenerational wealth is character and work ethic,
I know
connection to God. You know what I'm saying? That's the greatest thing she could have.
the what you just shared is something that I learned from one of my partners. He said, your network is your net worth.
Yeah,
Those those social relationships that you have is more valuable
meaningful.
than money, because guess what? If I know somebody with $1 billion, hell, you can damn near add that to me,
Hmm.
because especially if my relationship with them is
Hmm.
solid, there's nothing I have to worry about.
Hmm.
But to your point, number one, if your relationship with God is solid,
Yeah,
I don't ever have to worry about anything, because the people that He bring me around is going to make sure, God is going to make sure that I'm there for them and they're there for me.
yeah.
Uh, Before we go, because there is a little slight time limit on here,
Hmm.
I want you to do one favor for me. Give me a word of wisdom, and
Hmm.
also let the people know where they can actually check you out, see your merchandise, see your books, because I most definitely want them to purchase books. This is
Yeah,
Black History Month, and books are important to me.
yeah. Word of wisdom. George Jackson said, "It is by ideas." He said, "It is by words that we convey our thoughts and build. It is by words that we convey our thoughts and bend others to our will." Right. And the greatest conveyance of thoughts, this is my add into that, the greatest conveyance of thoughts and words is the ones unspoken inside of our head to ourselves about ourselves.
Know how to
What you
talk to
say
you.
to yourself about yourself dictate all the people, places, and things that you attract or repulse to or from your life. And so we don't attract what we want, we attract what we are. And be whatever it is that you want to become. And trust the process. Plant the seeds. Understand that it's a season for growing. This is a season for not growing. And so, and when you grow, stop. Prepare for the winter. The winter is constant as much as the spring and the summer and the fall. And so, the people can find me at Harlem Flowers, HALIM FLOWERS at Harlem Flowers on Instagram. And then, like for the books, just Google search or ChatGPT, Harlem Flowers, Amazon books, Amazon author page. All of my books at Amazon, and a good ChatGPT or Google search will take you to like LinkedIn, and I don't have Twitter, but like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. But I'm an Instagrammer, so you can find me there, and you from there you can connect to my clothing store, my books, my art, sneakers, everything.
I forgot you did a TED Talk too. And
Mhm.
last thing I'm gonna tell you, I commend you. And before I met you, I was already inspired by you, and you're one of my biggest inspirations.
Thank you, brother.
I look at others and see where God has taken them, and I look and I also understand where I'm going.
Hmm.
And you've been one of those inspirations, man. I'm just grateful to know you, grateful to be in contact with you, and I thank you for being the person that you are today.
Forward
Because
progress.
that is forward progress. You're the epitome of it, man. Look, I love you, bruh.
Love you
Peace and
too.
blessings, and hey, This is Forward Progress. My name is Carlos Walker, and this is Holly and Flowers. Blessings.
Bless.